Er is een bal wat ons staat. Nee. De weersinschrijft van de relatie. Als je hier kan staan, dan je moet in de camera.
Cool. Yes. Yes.
Ja, dat is mooi. Ja.
Ja. Hi, good morning. It's just after 10, so as any bus company knows, we should be on time. So welcome to everybody. The attendance, we're going to take the where you sign for your registration as the attendance. If any of you know about any apologies, I've not received any. We can speak to the SABOA people just for apologies, but that's the attendance and the apologies from my side done, unless anybody have got more to say on that topic. I'll take that as a yes. The agenda, somebody who wants to nod yes for the agenda? Anything new? This is going to be a cheap round. So Leon, jy gaan miskien oor 'n kwartier op wees. All right, feedback, page 2 on matters arising. Anything on RTMS, Kathy?
Thank you, Chair. So essentially from an RTMS point of view, obviously we've got great traction, particularly in the freight industry. However, we also have, we still have our operators that are RTMS certified in the bus industry, particularly if you look at the bus cores and the interstates, etc. And the primary benefits clearly is around self-regulation. But what is interesting is there's a new, the National Logistics Crisis Committee, which is dealing with some of the blockages where trucks are staging on all of the roads, is actually going to use the principle of RTMS to develop the LMS, which is the logistics monitoring system, in terms of which operators are going to be in a process where once they've loaded at a mine, and then there'll be a clearance process online through a platform, and then they don't actually leave the mine until such time as we know what time they're going through the border post. So at the biggest, and that of course impacts some of the bus operators because they are on the same roads. We've got 3,500 trucks an hour going through on the N4. So I think short version, RTMS definitely is giving the results that we want, and then also is allowing additional development in the industry. So short version, self-regulation, and the standard is obviously one of the best-selling standards at the SABS. But I think short version is RTMS definitely gives all the benefits that operators need, and that is to be sustainable. And then also it aligns to many of your the SDGs around the regulation, risk management, governance, etc., etc. Short version, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kathy. And it really hurts that she mentions the two companies whose representatives have not arrived yet, and she excludes Golden Arrow. So that's it hurts. Thank you, Kathy. NRCS, there's a few items there. One of them will be that it is that I'll give feedback on the conversion of a diesel bus to electric, and then what we think the interaction will be with NRCS. Where we're right now is on the NRCS side. We've started the collaboration with them. There's a lot of questions from their side, and we feel that that they haven't got all the rules of how would you homologate a bus that you've actually converted. So the current plan is that we're busy doing the conversion, because to go through all the work of a full homologation process is too much before you've done the testing. So we're going to do the testing on trade plates and with sandbags to simulate the loads. If the efficiencies show that it's a worthwhile exercise, then we will go through the whole process. Optimistic timeline is that we hope that the conversion will be done towards the end of October. So enough testing before the end of the year. to say it can be a commercial solution. Once that's done, then we will really go into it with the NRCS to figure out how do you get the vehicle on the road legally if there's a conversion that's going to take place. So I will give feedback at our next meeting to say how that ideal timeline have actually played out. I think that's the only thing on the NRCS list. If there's anybody else who wants to raise something on NRCS. Industry feedback. I did forget about that. On the yellow tape, the suppliers of the yellow tape, the reflectors tape that we use, there's a levy that they will pay, so that we will pay eventually, of 10 cents a meter that's being levied on the suppliers. So from our side, it is important that we use the suppliers who are supplying the legal reflectors tape. But there's going to be a 10-cent levy per meter that you buy. Will that cover it? Anybody else for something on NRCS? Strategic workshop feedback. Anything else, Shamila? Okay. The breakfast with the minister. I'm going to look to you quite often, so maybe you must join me. Yeah, Shamila. Okay, right at the end. Cool. I can live with that. Have any of you entered your drivers for the Highway Heroes competition? Fantastic. All right. So it's a good cause to follow. So please, if there's any nominations, please do that. SABOA structures. No nominations were received. And I think that is still the point where we are. And yeah, I think this is without opposition, you tend to win a race. So I'm not sure exactly according to the legal structures of SABOA, because I said, yep, I'll do it, but somebody must raise a hand or something. So is that done?
Sorry, I think Kathy and Ray did it at the last meeting. That was proposed and it was approved at the AGM.
Okay. You know. Yeah, it's thank you very much. Yep, I'm in. And then I think any other items, because this is really a quick one. I didn't lie when I said you're going to be on at 1:15, Leon. Kathy. Fantastic.
Okie dokie. So I do need to address the following. So indeed, sir, I did speak about the Artemis operators, which are currently certified. It doesn't mean that GABS isn't compliant. It's just they haven't been certified. So indeed, you're on Artemis compliant, and then of course all those wonderful benefits accrue to you. So thank you very much. So it wasn't intentional. It was just purely around certification, but you are compliant. Did I remedy that? And of course, you've got this awesome, exciting EV story going, which is fantastic. And you got these wonderful carports that pay for themselves solar. So clearly GABS is really driving and leading in terms of new technology. That I can remedy that. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Kathy really took my chirp quite personally. So that was not intended. And we're not going to touch on the electric bus story because I think it's tomorrow afternoon at 3:00. I'm telling the Golden Arrow story. And whenever I start telling the story, I apologize to the people that's heard it before, because it's the same story with small bits of new data that's come through. So you have to put yourself through some agony for half an hour to see if there's anything you haven't heard before, if you listen. And I really hope you can stay awake. But it's a really exciting time of what we are doing. And I think, and part of our strategy and part of being a member of SABOA is that we share all the data with anybody who's interested, because we know that even though we are a reasonable size operator that buy a reasonable size number of vehicles, it's not worth it for OEMs to just look after a company like Golden Arrow. So we need other people to be excited about or interested in it as well. So anybody who's interested, we gladly host people to come and visit and see what we're doing. But if you can put up with it, I think it's 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to go through the detail of what we're busy with. And I'm sure there's going to be quite a few questions coming up, because from this morning we're at level 6, I think. So, but you'll see some of the things that we anticipate how to handle load up till stage 8. After that, we stop thinking. Okay. So if there's nothing else, this has really been a quick round. And what I want to, and it's as part of the committee, please send the SABOA people what are the topics that will actually get the interest going, because we need to get a bit of momentum going in the meeting. And I think it is when people like Leon come and tell us their story that the interest can come up again. So please, either what's the topics that we should go hunting for, or what's the topics that members in SABOA actually want to share with all of us that's interesting and where the industry is going. It really helps. Otherwise, to get this going it's like pulling teeth, and it's difficult. So we're a bit early, Leon. If there's nothing else, anyone? I take that as a yes. All yours, Leon. Thank you for sharing with us this morning. Much appreciated.
Thank you for 2 minutes.
Right, so you can all hear me clearly. So a very good morning to you. My name is Leon Nelson. I'm the director for Volvo Buses Southern Africa, and I've been asked to talk a little bit about Volvo electric buses. So I will start this journey with a short video, and then we move on. So what was this all about? In 2021, Volvo buses in one day in the city of Gothenburg transitioned from diesel to electric. This is what this video, very much the message of this video. People move on, they do their thing every day, the same thing, but out in the streets, the diesel fleet were replaced with 145 full electric articulated buses. More to come. No, not on this one. So Volvo Group. Volvo Group is a global company with more than 100,000 employees, 140 nationalities, 12 brands, 190 markets, and production facilities in 18 countries. Electrified in all segments. Let me just get this going. We electrified in the construction, we electrified on the truck side, on the Penta side, and as well as on the buses. And for those of you who don't know, Volvo Trucks delivered the first 2 fully electric trucks to CDG a few months ago, already in operation here in South Africa. Volvo's footprint enabled the ability to support customers anywhere, anytime. Accelerating the sustainable transformation to 100% fossil-free fuel. If you look at the graph, you can see the ambition, Volvo's ambition to move and transition from legacy product to full electric. You will see the combustion engine will remain from 2040 onwards, and that's mainly for those using biodiesel. So it will be completely fossil-free as from 2040 onwards. That's at least the ambition as of today. This is a newly identified factory site in Sweden. Net zero. So what you will see here is, first of all, the environmental impact study required relocation of animals in the area. And this specific area, there was a special frog. They had to relocate to a different location. And what you will also notice here is, because it's a net zero site, the machine operating there is a battery electric machine. So this is the level of seriousness when we talk net zero. Partnerships, the new leadership. If one think about electric vehicles, I think Gideon already experienced that as well. It's not you only need diesel and you can go. There's a lot of components connected to it. You need to have a much closer relationship with the electrical side, with grid supply. If you go and think about net zero, you need to think about fossil-free steel, like in the case of SSAB. Volvo partnered with SSAB to do the development of fossil-free steel, and also partner with other companies as mentioned on this slide. If one move a little bit closer to buses, our vision is to enable a zero city, zero emissions from cradle to grave, zero noise, zero accidents, and zero driver turnover. So what do we mean by this? Zero noise, if I can use one as an example. With the buses and the video I shared with you earlier, they have done a study of households living close to very busy bus routes. And they've come to the conclusion, the outcome of the study, come to the conclusion that lower noise levels improve the quality of sleep. And that obviously improved the quality of rest. Improvement of the quality of rest improved health conditions of the people. Improved health conditions save the health cost to the government and the GDP and the economy of the country, and it also improves productivity of people at work. So this is the extent something like noise levels contribute to. Another item is I would like to touch on is zero driver turnover. What does that mean? From a Volvo perspective, improved cockpit driver area design, lower stresses to the driver, and with Volvo dynamic steering, research and tests proved reduced shoulder, arms, and neck difficulties for drivers over a longer period of time. Volvo's electrification journey started in 2008 with hybrid vehicles and all the different developments. 2017, the launch of the first electric vehicle, and in 2021, the launch of the first electric chassis, and from this year onwards, series production and acceleration of electrical vehicles. A global partner successfully delivering electrified solutions. If you look, Volvo do have electric vehicles all over the world. We have great results from the coldest Bude area and the hottest Dubai. Volvo's onboard telematics monitors and accumulate quality data continuously. What your citizens want is quality of life, cleaner air, less traffic noise, extended and improved public transport, improved safety for all road users, responsible use of energy, and a city to be proud of. The three disruptive technologies, electromobility, connectivity, and autonomous. All areas in development mode with additions daily. A focus much wider than the product. If one think about 10 years ago, when you as an operator think of buying a bus, you thought about the OEM, you thought about the transmission, and you thought about maybe the power and the torque, and this is how you compiled your decision. Today, we look at connectivity, we look at autonomous solutions, and so more. Cooperation. Got an interesting story to share with you here. In 2015, important stakeholders in Gothenburg gather and create an electromobility solution for the future. In 2020, 2021, the first 145 full electric buses was put into production. Collaboration with academia, the public sector, operators, all together create an opportunity today that when collaboration is required, it takes place naturally because participants know each other, they know what they've decided in 2015, they know how they went through the modes to get where they are today. A complete solution and not an isolated product. Important topics going forward for successful electric and sustainable transport. So, standardization, interoperability, compatibility, cooperation in long-term, circularity, sustainability, and corporate social responsibility, cybersecurity. This is how priorities changed. Circularity, sustainability, corporate social responsibility became the most important priority for the future. The focus on cradle to grave, the focus on clean energy, green energy. Volvo's sustainability commitment to the full value chain from cradle to grave. Main enablers for responsible purchasing, net zero supply chains, circular economy, and human rights. On circular economy, the importance of repair rather than replace. Batteries' second life. This is a famous housing association in Sweden that was converted to use used Volvo batteries. Second is used Volvo batteries for storage capacity of solar charging during the day and then overnight facility and supply from the batteries by using used batteries. Autonomous, narrow navigation, self-driving bus in low-speed areas, en route. Depot maneuverability, control tower managing driverless buses in typical depot processes. And the last one is the bus train. One bus driving other buses autonomously in a train-like application. All these are concepts under development. Zone management via geofencing. This is a very famous and customer-like technology where the bus controls the driver and not the other way around. So if a customer would like to have the bus passing a school at a speed of 20 or 30 kilometers an hour, the bus gets programmed like that, and before reaching the school, the bus automatically will reduce speed, pass the school at the set speed, and give the control back to the driver after that. The importance of questions when embarking on your electrification journey. What will the operation be like? And the main reason or driver behind that question is energy. When a vehicle operates, it requires energy. Will it operate in a hilly terrain? Will it require climatic controls? And many other. What are the energy supply possibilities? Are you going to use solar? You're going to use grid supply? Is it available? What is available? To what extent is the infrastructure developed in your area close to your depot in order to deliver on your requirement? And how to finance and manage the total cost of ownership. Because once again, it's not only about the bus, it's about the charger, it's about the charging infrastructure, and so forth. The choices we make today define the world we live in tomorrow. That's my story. If you was expecting to have a detailed specification discussion, that was not the intention of today. It was rather to give you a glimpse of the impact of electric vehicles on the environment and how the world prepare and set themselves in order to service that. Thank you. I don't know if there's questions. If there's easy questions, then I'll take it. If it's difficult, I'll rather go and sit. There's a question. Pardon? I think that's a question we should ask the energy minister, but but I think personally, if I can answer you personally, I believe that the transition from legacy products to electric products in the world globally will eventually force countries who are slower to fast track and transition. That's the one comment. The other comment, South Africa signed also the latest COP agreement to be net zero by 2050. So from that perspective, I think, let's say South Africa agreed to the ambition to be electrified by 2050, the target, the global target. Anything else? Any other question?
On a great presentation. Very interested in this geofencing is also applicable as a product to smaller buses or mini buses maybe. Is that something that's separate or is it only part of a Volvo solution?
As of now, it's part of a Volvo solution, and it is currently also available on the diesel products, on all Volvo products. It's an internal development by Volvo, for Volvo. There's a question. So far, so good. I hope this one is not difficult.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is James from Metrobus. We all know and we all understand going electric is very expensive. What incentives are there for small bus companies to steer them in that direction in terms of carbon credits or anything that will benefit them as well?
From a Volvo perspective, I think it's difficult to answer that question. But from a national perspective, if one go around and hear around, a lot of green funds are available to South Africa. So I think if one compile the right project and present it to the right people, it might be that to a certain extent you might be successful. That's the best I can answer that question. All right. Thank you, Gideon. Thank you, everyone.
Just to reiterate one or two things, or to the partnerships, and that's so important, and that's where I think SABOA can play a role, is to link all these partnerships that's going to be required. And it's so true. It's a total different game. In the diesel game, you can be on your own little island and you can be quite comfortable and everything can work. It will not work in this one, in our experience of just over 100,000 kilometers. Then the technology is, there's some technologies that we cannot wait for. And often we speculate about autonomous driving and people say never in South Africa. But maybe it's one of those where often I think we must be careful to look too far ahead. Whenever we get some creative juice in us, we say, hang on, but maybe inside your depot is where it can start. So if you sort out all your internet and all that the driver stops at the gate and the bus will go and wash itself and charge itself and do all those things. And then technology, that's the route where we're going to go. Because if you on the odd occasion is upset with a driver or two at the moment, the abuse that a diesel bus can take compared to the abuse that an electric vehicle can take, two different games. So we will have to improve on our driver behavior, and without technology, it's impossible. So there's all these things that's really going to play a huge role. The finance, yeah, it's part of our game at the moment. Is you hear the South African financial institutions advertising green finance. We put a small question there these days, is that should you be allowed to advertise green finance if you don't give discount versus dirty finance? We think you should not be able to call it green finance if it's the same rules as dirty finance, but we'll work on that. There's definitely lots of money available, but to find the conduit to get that money spent, if any of you find it, please come and talk to us. It's easier to work with Nedbank than it's easier to work with the Standard Bank than to work with any of the world banks or these people, so far our experience. And maybe it's just because we haven't got the skills, but that's also something that we can do in this association. Because just to add to what Leon said about incentives, our view at the moment, zero. So at the moment you're on your own. Your incentive to move this way will be if you believe it's a commercial solution. That's the incentive. And then once you go through that, you say, hang on, let's go as green as possible because it's the right thing to do and it's less expensive. But from government, nothing, it's actually punitive. If you import things, they tax you more than when you import the comparative combustion engine vehicle. Just something for the minutes of SABOA that I did miss that we should bring back. Axle loads. We want to, and it's something that fell, yeah, that went missing between our previous, between Basil and myself. We want to go to Department of Transport and say, can electric vehicles, or to apply for electric vehicles, to have the same dispensation as the BRT vehicles for weight? Just to see if that's possible. So if you can add that to the minutes, then we'll remember. Brian, Optibus. So we're really glad to have Brian here to come and educate us a bit. So Brian, all yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Let's just start with the introduction. So I'm Brian Mongera from Optibus Transportation Limited from Kenya, but I've been to South Africa quite a few times. And just want to, I guess, pick up from the good discussions we've had. Actually, it kind of transitions well on both, obviously, EV adoption in South Africa, and also the just how to manage it, and also how to manage bus operations in a digital manner, which is what I want to discuss with you today. So I'll just go into it. So as we know, public transportation in Africa generally has quite a few challenges in terms of being undeveloped, not keeping pace really with the urbanization that we see, especially in the big cities. The dominance from the informal modes of transport, the minibus taxis, the motorbikes, boda as we call them, which are not prevalent here, but they are in East Africa, if you've ever been. Obviously, the high levels of noise and air pollution that has been also discussed earlier, and accessibility issues, especially when you're talking about the rural areas. Yeah. So generally, it's viewed more of a necessity than a luxury. However, with a lot of potential. So, having been to South Africa quite a few times and spoken to a few operators, there's some things that have stood out in terms of, let's say, operations in South Africa. So the first one is the lack of integration, I would say, between, let's say, bus operations and other modes of transport. And of course, we have the minibus taxis, the trains, etc. And obviously, there's efforts towards creating that integrated public transport network plan, but looks like it's in its infancy. And that goes for the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa. One other thing that we've picked up as well is on the scheduling, which is a very complex task, I'm sure, as bus operators will admit, in terms of scheduling your fleet, scheduling your drivers, allocating them to this duty and so on, is done mostly in pen and paper or Excel. Of course, there's technology in some parts, but not everywhere. Also, for the drivers, equity in terms of the shifts, there's some who work long hours than others. There's some who maybe don't work their contracted hours. And ultimately, a lot of this has led to, the service unreliability due to low ridership in different parts. but crucially for operators, especially in difficult times, is there's no real visibility on potential savings from operations. So where maybe subsidies is reduced, how can operators run more efficiently so that they can draw the savings from the business. So ultimately, I think, generally, we've seen that it's manual methods of operating, which can be very difficult, time consuming, and also difficult to realize the savings, as I said. So what are the benefits of digitizing your operations? And I don't use the word digital transformation because sometimes it can seem a bit scary, but you're talking about, advancing or enhancing how you are operating today. And that's moving from, paperwork to digital work and transitioning over a period of time and building an operation that can stand the test of time. So these are some of the effects we've seen in Africa and other parts of the world. So first one is reducing the amount of time and man hours required to make and effect changes. Now, usually it can be depending on the structure of the setup, whether it's with the municipality, authority, and the operator. These things can take a lot of time, but through digitization, where there's concurrence in terms of information shared, this process can be increased and fastened. Also, digital timetables that are dynamic can also be updated a lot easier based on demand, based on maybe information on ridership, based also on predictive run times. I mean, there's situations where you're able to actually optimize your timetable based on an historic trips of, historic bus trips that have been operated. Also saving on resources and realizing operational efficiencies by optimizing your network. Again, crucial in terms of sustainability. Reducing complexity, being able to run, efficiently, less routes if not required, depending on the maybe save a depot or two if not required. Again, that leads to the bottom line for businesses. Also creating centralized repository of bus operations. So you have a single source of truth as your operation, which basically means you're covered in terms of speed of changes, in terms of saving time, and so on. And also effectively schedule different modes of public transport, because I think from a lot of discussions I've had also in South Africa, especially with, and it's the same with other parts of Africa, the minibus taxis are there to stay. So how can we integrate these services into one seamless service that can better serve the needs of the passengers? So second point is on transitioning to EV. And just to build up on what Leon said about, obviously, EV adoption in terms of the vehicles, but scheduling them is quite difficult. And we've seen that in different parts. There are key hurdles in terms of electrifying bus operations for operators, especially. So maybe lack of knowledge about it, and also experience with electric buses, because they're used to diesel buses. And there's also a feel when maybe repairs are needed. Sometimes it's a lot more structured, but generally they have got the experience to handle them. Also, the high initial investment costs, limited battery range, also restrictions in terms of flexibility. There's also need to not just have the buses, but also the charging infrastructure that goes hand in hand with that. Also culturally, adopting new work processes that maybe not only the planners, schedulers, but also the drivers are not used to. And also how the industry would approach planning, scheduling as a whole. But again, since we already know 2050 is the date set for transitioning, it's important to address some of these issues, in advance of that time, and make sure that you're not caught out in terms of running the operations. So scheduling electric vehicles, again, is something that is really paramount in terms of optimizing the resources within. So both the ICE, internal combustion engines, and the EV. So we know that in most cases, or all cases, it's going to be a mixed fleet, and the shift to zero emissions is not going to happen overnight, right? So it's going to be maybe a gradual process because of some of the cost constraints and so on. So with this, you're able to schedule your mixed fleet service even as you look to transition 100% to EV. Of course, saving on costs through proper optimizing, you're able to create different schedules that are predictable. You're also you're able to optimize on electricity costs, charging times, location, road conditions, traffic, weather, and so many more parameters that are critical when running EV. And also one thing that, we've got a lot of feedback on is it's also important to run a seamless schedule service. So one that is designed smoothly in terms of the charging times into daily operations with minimum disruptions on the day-to-day functionalities for operators, because at the end of the day, they still have to operate affordable, reliable, and safe public transportation for their passengers. So there's a lot of benefits in doing this, but it's the how we do it that is also crucial in the process. So just a bit as I conclude about what we do. So the company that I represent, Optibus, is in 4,000 cities. And we have a software platform that does essentially all this, that is cloud native end-to-end, and really manages all the needs of most operators and transportation authorities in over 4,000 cities in all the continents in the world, built on AI and optimized algorithms. So its ability to run some of these functionalities as the core transportation engine in terms of road and network planning, creating of the timetables, scheduling, optimizing of the timetables, vehicle and crew scheduling, also coming up with the rosters. Again, we just talked about the electric vehicles and also running the full day-to-day operations. So I'll just conclude by, this is our footprint, and we're also in South Africa. We're in a few cities in South Africa, Cape Town, Mpumalanga province, Bombela, and so on, and also in Tondeka in Kampala in Uganda. But largely, we're quite new in Africa and really excited about the opportunity we see within public transportation to make it better for all. So to conclude, it's important to invest in the digital tools that can help run your operations more efficiently to reduce manual work and also save on cost for operators. Planning and scheduling are also vital components in the successful deployment of electric vehicle and the management of charging infrastructure. And South Africa can become the testbed and breeding ground for tomorrow's urban transportation systems, especially with the good work you're doing in the EV space and formalization of public transport. Thank you very much. So I'll follow the queue as well and just open the floor to any questions anyone might have from the presentation. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Tabo. I just wanted to find out in terms of integrating your solution with other maybe tracking systems and so forth, how well does it do that? And maybe can you say something about that? Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So yes, so we do integrate with other ITS systems, telematics, automatic fare collection rather, ERP systems, and so on. So we do have APIs that allow us to integrate because we can't really operate in a silo, and we understand that there are other suppliers of other systems that operators use. So the simple answer is yes, we do seamlessly integrate. We do have a list of standard integrations, which are out of the box at Optibus, but we do also customize integration if required. And that goes for reports as well. Any more for any more? Yep. Yes.
Good morning. Thanks for the presentation, Brian. You mentioned that you have presence in Mpumalanga as well as Cape Town. Is it in terms of just office space, or you meant operators that are using Optibus? Because personally, I integrated because we were interested in the system. I think that was a year ago. Sadly, the individual obviously has since left Optibus, so we lost contact. So yeah, if you can just address me on the current operators that are using your system. Because I've learned, from the past at times that service providers can sell something that in practice is something totally different. So my approach now, I want to physically interact with a system and be able to see the full capability of the system before one can dive in head first. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes. So just to clarify, yes, we are working with an operator in Mpumalanga, so Basco. Also in Cape Town, UCT, and in Uganda, that's Tondeka Metro Company. Happy to pick up conversation on the one you previously had with my colleague who's left. So I'm now looking after the continent. And thirdly, your point about, let's say, a proof of concept. So that's something we do. I understand that, of course, transitioning or adopting a new tool, sometimes operators would like to see either conceptually what it can do for them, or we also do proof of values, where we can actually, for a limited time period, show you the value for your system so that you can have the confidence to then go forward and say, okay, we would like to roll this out in our entire operation. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm John from Metrobus. Just clarity in relation to what you have mentioned. You seem to be concentrating more on scheduling of electric buses. Does this system work well with where we are still using diesel buses to be able to schedule as quickly as you can do with electrified buses?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, so we schedule all types of buses. There's emphasis in this presentation on EV because, of course, of the transition, and it's a topic that has gathered a lot of momentum. But there's no question about scheduling of diesel buses. In fact, that's our bread and butter. Most operators that we work with do have internal combustion engine, also not natural compressed gas. So all types of buses, hybrid buses, and so on. I think the emphasis here is just to make operators aware that as part of the fleet of buses that we cater for, the EV is certainly one of them, but it's by no means an exception. Yeah. Excellent. So if there's no more, thank you so much. I'm available. Oh, sorry, go on.
Hi, Brian.
Hello.
Mario from Cuba. On your platform that you've got, you said it's obviously cloud native, probably AWS. Are you reliant on data supply to you in order to start doing the scheduling? And obviously, what you sort of explained is it's a pre-scheduling system for planning only. Okay, how do you incorporate the actual of what operators are doing versus the plan? Because that can change on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, yeah. So on the data front, so yes, we do take, especially when you're planning your network, largely in the format of GTFS, if operators are aware of GTFS, but stop location time points is also something that we can absorb through our Excel spreadsheet into Optibus. And largely Optibus, especially the first three modules that I talked about, allows operators to plan ahead of operating their service, to schedule ahead and roster. Now we've talked about integrations already. So through, CAD AVL system, APTMS light systems, whatever you want to call it, of course, through the actual run trips, we can verify that information through integrations. But largely what we do for a lot of operators is allow them to operate ahead of time. And our last module, the operations module, is the one that takes that anonymous information or that pre-planned information into the real life environment and allows you to have that seamless sort of experience there. So it's not just the planned ahead, but it's also the actual operated. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much. Like I said, I'm available today, tomorrow, so happy to interact and discuss with you going forward. Thanks a lot. Cheers, Gideon.
Just before I hand over, Shamila is going to give us some feedback. If I listen to this, then if we thought that scheduling is complex, the next round there's a few variables that's going to be added. And if you look at your the condition of your battery charging to be included in the scheduling, plus the level of charge. So whatever way we have been doing it, if we're not going to do it in a smarter way, we're probably setting us up for failure or setting us up for not performing the way that we should. And it's difficult if you've been in the game for a while to open up to new, but this is definitely not a status quo environment that we're in. So technology, and this is one of the forms of technology, and everything Leon mentioned, it's going to play a huge role in where we're going. So it's both scary and exciting times, but we just need to take that step, and maybe small steps is the way to go. Just before we end, Shamila is the final speaker, and then I'll just end up, and we've got one idea of just to introduce everybody. There's a few new faces around. Shamila.
Thanks, Gideon. It's actually Shamini. Great, thanks. As you know, Basil Governor left SABOA a few months ago, so I'm just helping out in the interim. So my background is really in road freight, so it's a bit of floor crossing. So pardon me if I'm still learning the terminology and I slip up and talk about a truck instead of a bus. Old habits die hard. But I just wanted to give you some feedback from the SABOA Secretariat and some policy matters. So ABT, it's a hot topic, almost as hot as EV. Unofficially, we've heard, and this is really unofficial, that the DOT is planning to promulgate, and we have rollout by in October. I know we have a speaker just now with Thabo Nale. You can hear at the next meeting. So I'm going to take some of the sting out so that you don't give him a hard time. There will be costs. And it will become mandatory if it is promulgated. So that we're looking at dev costs to implement. You're looking at a commission that will be paid on transactions to the clearinghouse. I'm just giving you some background. The policy did come out, the draft policy came out, and SABOA did make comment a while ago. And the outcome from that was that they were supposed to, actually, the DOT and the consultants were supposed to engage with the operators. We've talked to the DOT consultants, and they were waiting for operators to engage with them. So there's two aspects, really. One on the operational and the technical aspects of rolling out a system such as that, or the conversion. And then also the actual lobbying on whether we want it or whether we will accept it as operators. So we have to really separate that. So today, Thabo will actually talk about later on the technical aspects. So we will still engage with the DOT. We also have a Q&A, 87 Q&A and answers and responses on how the technical side of it will work. So if you'd like to have that presentation, I'll circulate that. But we've asked for an urgent meeting with the DOT now, because it's all good and well talking to the municipalities, but not talking to the operators. If it's going to be mandatory and you're going to be affected, they have to talk to the operators, right? And, there will be cash flow impacts as well. For the municipalities, they're looking at paying over the cash about 7 days before you get the money. And that's because they didn't have the resources to do the recons. But the system can be set up to still, 24 to 48 hours is still a long time. And I believe that the users also are not too happy with the system because their money won't show immediately on the account. So there's quite a few issues. I know Kuba is here today, so probably, they've been involved in the project with the COT, so maybe you can chat to them as well, okay? Then I just want to talk about the integrated transport charter. We started this process many, many years ago, and it was basically put on hold because we didn't get agreement or consensus. In fact, in all the different sectors within the industry, within the transport industry. So there's a new charter council that has been appointed. Tomorrow, the chairperson is actually speaking at conference, but they've revamped the process now. They've resuscitated. So tomorrow is actually the first official consultation with the bus industry. You can actually attend in person, or they've sent a link for a virtual session. So please just let me know if you don't have that. And there's also what they call BE 101 classes, an opportunity to engage. So I know I may not be talking to the right people here, but please share it with your teams. I know SABOA in the past had a BE committee where we discussed the technical issues. I think we will have to reconstitute that, but please just share that and give input on that. Employment equity as well. I'm sure you saw there was quite an uproar on the draft sector codes, the sector targets rather, because it will have an impact. So it's not that SABOA is not supportive of transformation, but it does take planning and it will impact your business. So please keep an eye on that. The draft regulations are not yet in effect. We have made comment as SABOA. There were two legal challenges, one with Solidarity, but they've now signed a settlement agreement. And the DA, I think, is still pursuing that. And I'm sure you'll see a lot of it in the news. So we're just waiting to hear the outcome on that. And then when green issues being quite prevalent these days, we attended a green transport awareness campaign by the DOT. It's really to disseminate information, and I think they're trying to do that provincially, to just talk about the strategy. It was interesting, we saw the Volvo truck, and that's why we talked about the electric bus. Just one thing that did come out, and we heard, apparently it's just for buses and trucks as well, that because of the placement of the battery, we'll actually look at extending the vehicle, the truck trailer and the bus trailer combination. And I believe the OEMs are going to lobby with NAMSA. So I don't know, Leon, if you can comment later on it.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Because that's something to watch, because this means changing legislation, and it'll be interesting to see how you can actually enforce that, because the truck looks the same. You're not going to know if it's an electric vehicle, right? Or a bus. Then WWF. We talked about partnerships earlier, and I think this is a good opportunity to talk to them about projects available and what we can do, because they've invited us to a workshop on electric vehicles. In fact, Kate Karnak actually presented at our AGM. She did an abbreviated presentation of what she did for the WWF. And it was really a case study on what's available, the population and of the bus industry, and all vehicles, and just the costs, the planned costs, and when you get optimization. I think she borrowed a lot from Gabs. But if you'd like to have a copy of that presentation, just shout, we'll share that with you. And then just on the BOCA negotiations, the BRT, that's been concluded. And there's always a battle between the taxi industry and the bus industry, and I'm not talking about the violence, but really to get the recognition and respect that we deserve as an industry. So I think we're trying to rebuild and that relationship with COT, because there have been issues. And if you're attending the ops conference, the ops meeting just now, you'll hear a lot more about that as well. And I think we need to take a stand, and that's slowly happening, where we throw our toys out of the cart. And they've now established a steercom. It's happened. The first one again is on the 11th, and we'll have regular meetings so that the bus industry can have its say, and be taken seriously when we have these discussions. Just in terms of communication, so I've continued to write the focus articles. So we have a monthly column there. So I urge you to please just send information, things that you hear about, that you want to talk about, that we can actually lobby about, because you have to be the eyes and ears on the ground, right? And give us information and ask us to actually take it up on your behalf. And it's a good opportunity to use focus to do that. So industry collaborations, I think you'll hear more about this at the conference, and if you're attending tonight, you'll hear about the Master Drive collaboration, so I won't share that now. I did talk about, I said I'll give you feedback on the breakfast with the minister. So after the minister met online with SABOA, and you know, she urged you to not provide the vehicles for the EFF rally, remember that debacle? She actually wanted to have an engagement with us. So we would propose having a special breakfast. So we still on the list, the next item on a next available date for her to be, available to have that meeting. But I think it was too close to conference. So I'm not sure if you know, she's actually attending tomorrow. She's going to do the keynote address. So that's a wonderful opportunity to speak to the minister. So I think that just the events were too close together to be planned. Yeah, and then lastly, tonight we have MEC from KZN and a whole delegation from the Gauteng Department of Transport. The MEC was also supposed to attend, but she had a family emergency. So you have quite a full program. I mean, a high level of delegation as promised between today and tomorrow. So that's it from my side. Thanks, William. I don't know if there's any questions. Happy to take it. Great. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So just the final one before, yeah, we've fortunately got a bit of time. I said a suggestion from Ray, and always when at least when I receive good suggestions, I always think, why the hell did I not think of it? But being a slow thinker is definitely a challenge. There's quite a few new faces, so maybe if we can just go around the room and just your name and where you're from. So Gideon Etling, Golden Arrow Bus Services in Cape Town, and I'm the company engineer. So shall we go from the left and work our way that way?
Thanks, Gideon. As I said, I'm Shamini Naidu, just interim executive manager, just warming the seat until we have a permanent replacement at SABOA.
My name is Rajesh. I'm just supporting Shamini.
Hello, I'm Peter de Necker, technical manager Interstate Bus Lines in Bloemfontein.
Hi, I'm Rian Bauer from Gauteng Bus and Coach Center and KL Engineering.
Hi, Sean van den Jefer, Unitrans Passenger, Technical Division.
Hello, my name is Mahauta Sopoko. I am from MAM Travel and Tours. I'm the manager and I'm the managing director and the owner. We are based in Botshabelo near Bloemfontein. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Philip Tungwane, Optibus representative and also Fleet Forest COO.
Yeah, hello again, Brian Mongera, Optibus Transportation Limited.
Good morning, I'm Darby Wilson, Assistant Managing Director of Busco.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Malabella from Busco in Mpumalanga, Nelspruit.
Good morning. I'm Ahmed Balam. I'm also from Busco, Workshop Manager.
Good morning again. I'm John Gabi Gamede, Senior Manager, Integrated Business Operation and Center of Excellence for Metrobus.
Morning, everyone. My name is Tommy van Niekerk. At Gauteng Bus and Coach Center, Development Division.
Good morning. John Nansel from Voigt, South Africa.
Good morning. Frick Smith, Director Sales, Voigt, South Africa, based in Whitfield, Boksburg. Thank you.
Hi, Leon Nelson, Volvo Buses.
Hi, Thabo Nale from Nale Technologies, ITS consultant.
Morning, everyone. My name is Rutando Masikwa. I'm from Metrobus. I'm Operations Manager.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Abongile Nongenzi Kubapay.
Morning all. Marius, Customer Relationship Manager, Cooper Pay. We do automatic fee collection systems in South Africa.
Morning, Malcolm Wilkin, Busmark.
Morning, everyone. Oscar Shabalala from CTU. We provide insurance to the bus industry.
Morning, everyone. Tabam Maite from CTU.
Good day, it's Ray Kashagan, a freelance consultant.
And Mr. Bus. Etienne Olshausen, Void Turbo, South Africa.
Morning, everyone. Giacomo Vigili, MAN Bus.
Morning, everybody. Andreas Brook, ZF Services, South Africa.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tapol Tindi, Technical Manager from Tshwane Rapid Transit. Thank you.
Good morning, Kathy Bell, Standard Bank Commercial Asset Finance, and also the Associate Council Member Representative. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Morena Mufugeng, Operations Manager at Tshwane Rapid Transit.
Morning, everyone. My name is Eric Motswane from Piotrans and also SABOA Gauteng PEC. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is James Biekes from Metrobus, Technical Manager at Metrobus.
Good morning, everyone. My name is S.A. Mahlangu, Metrobus Operations Superintendent.
Morning, everyone. My name is Siabong Ntlego, MAN Bus.
Hello, Medhat from MCV, South Africa.
Morning, everyone. My name is Sipiso Mokhatla. I am a sales intern at MCV South Africa.
Morning, everyone. I'm Shabir Mohammed from MCV South Africa.
All right, then just for a final, not sure if this is a Dr. Phil or whatever comment, but it's one of those, are we looking at challenges or opportunities? So I hope we're going, oh, there's another one to introduce, Nora.
Nora Fakude from Basco.
All right, so challenges, opportunities, and of course it's difficult, but we need to start, and it's all these cliches. Many of these workshops have got the risk of, when all is said and done, a lot more is said than done. So we need to do things, and that's where we need to go. And I heard an interesting alternate description of a perfectionist. It's just a different name for a procrastinator, because you never start, because it needs to be perfect. And I don't think we've got the luxury for that. So it is really, we need to start and see where we end up, because I think Leon said that we follow the world. It's not that so the world's going that direction and we're going to be behind, but we need to move in the right direction. And just the final one, yes, please help us that we can build the momentum of the technical meeting. And it's really, we need some input, and what would you like to see, and what's the things that's bothering you, and who's the people that can come and tell us what's happening in their part of the industry that we all represent. Then a few thank yous. It's thank you to all of you for being here. It's really appreciated to see a room full of people at this meeting. And I'm still old school. Zoom and all that, really fantastic, but a physical meeting still float my boat. And then to Leon and Brian, thank you for the presentations, much appreciated. Harry, you and your team, thank you for assisting us on the virtual side. And then Shamini and the team, my apology for the wrong pronunciation or the wrong name, but thank you for everything that you and your team do. It is really appreciated. We don't often say it enough, but thank you very much. Once again, to all of you, thank you for being here. There's a finger lunch as far as I know, and then it's around 2 after lunchtime. So we're 10 minutes early. Thank you very much.
Oh, let me just. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think we can start. I would like to welcome you to the operations meeting in conjunction with the SABOA conference and expo. So you're welcome. We have some people that joined online as well. So I trust that they will also participate. If you would like to comment on something or ask a question, just raise your hand, and then Harry will bring the mic to you. So that that will also be recorded and also for the benefit of the people that joined us online. So yeah, once again, welcome to everybody. Just one change on the agenda. The presentation by CTU will not take place in this operations meeting. It has been moved to the gala dinner tonight. So it didn't drop off of the conference. It is just a change. And it will take tonight, as I said. Okay, with that, if we can move to the second point, attendance and apologies. Shamini, do you have any apologies? Right. Okay. Confirmation of the agenda. I mentioned the presentation by CTU. Apart from that, there's no changes to the agenda. I don't know if there's anybody that would like to add any points to the agenda. If not, we can take the agenda as approved, as proposed. Then if we can move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, that's the meeting held on 17th May at the SABOA offices. If you can look at page 1, please stop me if you have any comments or any changes. Are there any changes to page 1? Page 2? Page 3? Or the last page, page 4? If there are no changes, can we take the minutes as approved? I see nodding heads. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everybody. I'll sign the minutes, Shamini. If we can then move to point 4 on the agenda. Actually, point 5, matters arising. The first point is point 6.1 on the minutes, violence avoidance strategy. Shamini, if you can give us feedback on that one, please. Shomani? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Harry. It is just on the violence avoidance strategy. So what had happened is SABOA had proposed that we be included in the NatJoc structures with SAP, so that at least we can be proactive when something like what we've experienced in Cape Town occurs with the taxi violence or any other violence or intimidation suffered by the bus industry. So we weren't able to continue from where Basil left off, but the good thing is Colonel Boysons, who was at the conference last year and put a plan together, is going to be here tonight at the gala dinner. So I'm hoping to resuscitate discussion. So we'll have something going forward.
Thank you. I think keep the mic. You will be on the on the floor for the next few points. Any comments on the violence awareness strategy? We can move on to point 6.2. That's ABT. There is a presentation on the agenda. So Thabo Nale will do the presentation just now. Then the next point is 6.3, Focus Magazine. Shamini?
Okay, so just before, Bram, can I just go back to ABT and just by show of hands, was there anybody not in the earlier meeting, in the tech meeting? Do I have to give more feedback on ABT again? No? Everybody's good? Okay, so I just in terms of lobbying, so just for the minutes, I think we did say that unofficially we've heard that ABT will be rolled out in October with a 3-year phasing implementation plan. And we're going to engage with the DOT to see what the impact will be on operators, because that part has fallen short, where there's not enough interaction and discussions with operators to determine the impact in terms of cost. But Thabo will actually cover the technical aspect.
Yeah, we will raise some issues with Thabo. I'm sure there will be a lot of comments or questions to him.
So just
then 6.3, the magazine.
So just in terms of focus, I will continue writing the articles, but if there's any issues that you'd like me to raise and just bring matters to light, so that people can actually hear about it, so we can lobby actively on it, please just send to the office.
Okay. Any comments? We can maybe move to 6.4 or to update. Kathy, a special welcome to you today. We haven't seen you for some time. You're welcome as always. Do you have any further update on R2?
Yes, so you would have seen in the news that Auto lost their court case, the Constitutional Court challenge on Auto. So that means that Auto is basically ready to go ahead, full steam. We have a speaker tomorrow to talk about the implementation and rollout. And it will really have a major impact on the industry, because you will have to know points of the drivers. You'll have to see if the vehicles are ready to go out on the road, because the points demerit system, it's quite horrific. I think SABOA didn't object to it previously. It's just that we raised concerns about the impact that Auto would have on the operators. So we'll hear more about that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Shamini. Any comments? Next point, 7.1, strategy workshop feedback. It was minuted previously, EXCO has decided to postpone the follow-up strategy workshop until the permanent executive manager is appointed. Are there any further feedback on that one, Shamini?
No, nothing on the strat session, but maybe to give feedback that we're still actively searching for a permanent executive. So if anybody isn't interested, or if you know anybody that you think is a suitable candidate, you're welcome to share that with me and we'll take it forward. We are using a recruitment company to headhunt, so we'll actually give the details to them.
Okay, thank you. 7.2, welcome breakfast with the Minister of Transport.
So just in terms of the breakfast, we first up on the list of available dates for the Minister. I think it was just too close to conference, because the Minister is actually addressing us during the keynote address tomorrow. So we'll just wait to have a date. But the whole idea was that she could introduce, to engage with operators, and we wanted to welcome her into the industry. So tomorrow will serve that purpose. So we may still go ahead with the breakfast as well in the future.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? 7.3, SABOA Industry 2023 Conference, dinner and exhibition, which we are here for. Any further feedback on that? I think just to welcome you to the conference and the expo. I hope you find it meaningful, and please visit all the exhibits. And I don't know if you want to add something I'm sure we'll see most of you tonight at the gala dinner.
Yeah, I think just to say a point further that I think for the first time in a very long time, we have such high levels of government being represented at SABOA, which I think is an excellent sign to see that the industry is being taken seriously. We were supposed to have 2 MECs here tonight. So we'll have the KZN MEC and the senior delegation for Gauteng Department of Transport. And tomorrow the minister and also the DGG for public transport will be our guest here tonight. So it's a very good representation from the DOT from transport, which I think bodes well for SABOA, so we can be taken seriously as an industry.
Thank you, Shamini. The next point, 7.4, SABOA collaborations. Holla at CTU Master Drive.
Okay. So in terms of the Highway Heroes competition, I think we have sent out information and they have followed through with CTU as well, contacting operators for the competition. So we hope that will run its course and we'll have good news in the future when the winners are announced. Just on Master Drive, we'll have an announcement this evening. We were supposed to have a winner announced for the safety awards. And safety is just key and paramount to the association. I'm sure you want to maintain a good standard. It doesn't help to award people if they don't really bring something to the table. So unfortunately, what has happened, and maybe the announcement is premature now, but I just want to give you feedback. We won't announce a winner. Master Drive will not do that because the entrants that came through were not up to the standard. So I think you'll all agree with me that it doesn't help to just announce somebody when they really shouldn't be recognized because it really causes more damage to the industry.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? If we can then move to 7.5 on the agenda, I think maybe I should give feedback on this one. I can just mention, as stated, SABOA was not directly involved in the negotiations. It was a matter between the operators and the province, but SABOA met with the MEC, Gauteng MEC, and some discussions were held, but apart from that, SABOA was not directly involved. The feedback I can give is that all Gauteng operators on interim and tendered contracts signed new negotiated contracts effective the 1st of July. So the contract was signed the 30th of June and it's effective for 7 years. So 7-year contract with the option of a further renewal depending on your scorecard, the quality of service that you render to the passengers. So this is obviously good news for all the operators in terms of the previous short-term contracts that we've had. Generally good rates, much improved rates that were agreed on, but also, nothing is for free. So there's a very strict penalty regime in place. So, but still, it's for the operator to make full use of the higher rates. If you provide a good service and minimize your penalties, you will be able to claim a lot more revenue. I don't know if there's any other contributions from any of the other operators that signed the contracts. But in general, good news for the whole industry, not only in Gauteng, but nationally. Also for our associate members, I'm sure it will filter through to them. I've heard that some benefits already flowed through to them in terms of orders and so on. And I'm sure the other provinces will follow. So yeah, in general, good news for the industry as a whole. We can then move to 7.6, National Land Amendment Bill, Economic Regulation and Transport Bill, and the National Road Transport Amendment Bill. Shamini, please.
Thanks, Bram. So just to let you know that SABOA did present to the Transport Portfolio Committee at Parliament on the Economic Regulator Bill. And one of the things that came across is that, so the bill, just to give you some feedback, it was supposed to actually regulate monopolies like Transnet and the ports, and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, the bus industry actually falls within that because when you have a negotiated contract where you become a monopoly because there aren't any other players in the industry. And they said it does apply. And the worrying thing is when they set up this regulator, there will be a fee, but also it gives the DOT the powers to change rates where you've already negotiated previously. So I think we need to keep an eye on that. It hasn't been promulgated yet. We have given comment.
Thank you, Shamini. Any questions or comments? Okay, if we can then move to point 8 on the agenda, updates on provincial public transport environments. I'm not sure if Matlakala is maybe online. Matlakala Motlung. Okay, seems not. Yes, Eric? On the contracts. Yes, yeah. Okay. Any other provinces present? Free State, Shabeli, or KZN, Piet Corneer, also not online. Any other provinces present? Okay, it seems not. Then just
Chair.
sorry, it seems like there's somebody.
Hello, Chair, it's Derek Meyer.
Yes, Derek. Yeah, if you can give us feedback, maybe in the province in general, but also, you know, we're just about to give feedback on the BRT. So if you can include the BRT as well, thank you.
Okay, Chair. So I'll should right into the BRT in terms of the Western Cape. The contracts for the first phase 1 has not put out to tenders yet, but it seems imminent as far as we're concerned from the city. The Enter Express has been extended in the past couple of weeks by a further 2 years, with the intent that Enter Express contract will form part of the phase 2A, which is intended for some time around 2025. So at this stage, there's a lot of communication between the stakeholders and the city for planning towards phase 2A. Otherwise, everything is still up and running as we speak. You would all know that we did have a rather bad taxi strike in the Western Cape. That has come to an end, thankfully. But the processes that follow after the strike, whether it is court cases and or discussions on how to move forward, is still very much happening between the city and Santaco. That's all I've got for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. The agreement that was reached, do you think that will be a long-term solution, or do you think it's still very much a tense situation that can go either way or get out of hand at any time?
Chair, to be honest with you, I think in the short term there might be solutions in terms of law enforcement and the taxi body, but until such time that we to some extent formalize the industry and have government actually take ownership of that, I think it could flare up. It could flare up anytime.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Derek. Any comments or questions to Derek? If not, I can give feedback on the Joburg BRT situation. As mentioned in the previous meeting, phase 1A operated by Piotrans. The contract has ended, but it was extended by the city for 24 months, subject to the awarding of the tender, which we expect now in October. And if the new operator, if it's not Piotrans, if the new operator is able to operate sooner than the 24 months extension, the new operator will commence with his services within the 24 months. So whether the City of Joburg will award the tender is not sure. Obviously, it's a very sensitive situation with the taxis. But Eric, I don't know if you have maybe more information on that one, Piotrans specifically.
Thank you, Chair. I think you have captured it correctly. Just a small correction that the contract is not an extension. It's a completely new contract altogether with new conditions. Just to do that correction so that the boy is not.
I'm aware of that. What I said, the current contract, well, actually the one that expired, has been extended for 24 months.
No, it's not an extension.
Is that a new one? Only for 2 months?
It's a new,
for 2 years?
Yes, it's a new 24 months contract. Just to do that correction. It was also captured like that previously, but because things were still new, we couldn't grapple with the situation.
Okay.
Just so that SABOA is not found to be in trouble. Thank you.
No, I wasn't aware of that, but
Yeah.
I think the implication is not really much different from the extension.
I
But in
hope-
any case,
I
we
hope so.
take note. Thank you for the correction.
I hope so. Thank you.
Then on phase 1B, operated by Litsomayisu, it's actually going well. Although operations were in some extent affected by the turmoil in Pietrans, some strikes and so on. So because Litsomayisu and Pietrans share the same depot, the service by Litsomayisu were also affected with drivers blocking the gates and so on. But apart from that, it's actually going well. And Litsomayisu is now in the 7th year of the 12-year contract. Then phase 1C, a lot of uncertainties with regard to 1C, and there's a dispute still under consideration. So no specific information on that one. I don't know, Eric, if you maybe have information on 1C as well. I'm not directly involved in that one. So it seems like and nobody really wants to say what's going on. Very secretive and so on. But what I said is the information I have. Nothing to add. Thanks. Thanks, Derek. Then on the Tshwane one, TRT, we've got representations from Tshwane TRT. So Morena, if you can just give us short feedback on the BOCA negotiations that took place since November last year, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm that we have been engaged in negotiations with the city of Tshwane since last year, November, up until last month. So the negotiations for the BOCA 1 for the 12-year period have been concluded. So all we are waiting for now is for the city to wrap up their internal processes, i.e. their MEICO up until council, particularly the 60-day public participation process that they must still go out on. The last engagement we had with the city at the steering committee, the city indicated their go live to be 1st of March next year. So that's where we are. I know, Chair, as you know, that there is an issue of the affectedness from the bus side, which obviously we are more qualified to talk about that issue. But yeah, from the negotiations that we were engaged in, they have been wrapped up. So we are hoping that come March, the 12-year BOCA contract can commence. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Marina. Maybe just for the benefit of the other people, the situation in Tshwane is slightly different from other cities where you have only going to have one BOC, not different BOCs for different lines and so on. You mentioned BOCA 1. If you can just give us a bit more information, what is BOCA 1 and where that will fit in with the one BOC in Tshwane?
Yes, we are correct that the resolution was taken that in Tshwane we'll have only one BOC. So BOCA 1 touches on a few areas. So the city has indicated that once they are ready, then they will look at other phases as part of BOCA 2. So under BOCA 1 contract, so they have identified certain phases and areas for implementation. So once they are ready with the rollout for other phases, then there will be engagements again for BOCA 2, but still under or being operated by the same BOC.
Yeah, thank you. I think that covers it. So the implications are that you'll have one BOC with one contract, BOCA 1, which might be 3 years into the 12-year contract, and then BOCA 2 might start with a new 12-year contract for that specific one. So obviously there's pros and cons in that. So you might have the BOCA 1 expiring, but then you have BOCA 2 and maybe 3 still some years to go for the 12-year contract. So it's slightly different from other cities. I can also give feedback, or are there any questions on the Tshwane situation? If not, I can also give feedback on Rustenburg. I spoke to the people involved in Rustenburg, and Rustenburg started just about a year ago on the 1st of August last year. Only operating one route up till now. They are busy preparing to start operating on a second route as well. At the moment, they operate with 10 BRT buses, as well as 35 minibus taxis. All of the taxis have also been branded with electronic ticketing machines on the taxi, so they are fully part of the BRT operation. At this stage, the biggest problem they're experiencing is the availability of buses. As you know, it's the availability of chassis is a problem. They have ordered some new buses, and they're also trying to convert some second-hand buses to introduce them also as part of the BRT. And I've also been told that there's actually a very good demand. Passenger numbers are picking up, so the passengers seems to appreciate the service. And also at this stage, they have 90 full-time staff, as well as 60 contract drivers on a time contract for 1 year. So it seems like it's actually going well on the Rustenburg side. I think that covers the provincial updates and the BRTs. I don't know if there's any general comments on the BRTs or the provinces. If not, we can move on to point 9. 9.1, the Operations Committee Chairperson, Shamini.
Just to note that Bram has offered himself again to stand as chair, and it was accepted at the AGM. We also didn't receive any other nominations, so that will stand. And then another, can I cover 9.2 as well?
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay, so we did request for associate members to any representation that would like to be on council. If you'd like to submit a nomination, please do that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Shamini. I think that covers the matters arising. Are there any further comments on the minutes that we maybe skipped? Okay, I think we've covered the minutes. Then if we move on to industry issues. Shamini, I'm not sure what is covered on the industry issues, point 6 on the agenda.
Thanks, Bram. I really wanted to just give feedback on the issues, but we did cover a lot of that in the technical meeting. But just for minuting, so the issues with one would be the ABT that Tabanale is going to talk about as well. The charter discussion, please, if you can attend, or if you can convey the message for people in the office involved in DE to please attend the consultation sessions tomorrow online, if not in person. I think it's very important that you're represented. Because this is an official consultation and we can't turn around later and say we didn't understand the impact. They're giving us this opportunity. And it's very difficult as SABOA to comment for everybody because everybody's businesses are different. So we'd really like to see how it's going to impact you so we can actually consolidate our response. And there's a lot of initiatives running, one of it being DE training, where we can actually have a separate forum to provide input on that. Employment equity, we will still wait to hear what's going to happen with the draft regulations. It is going to impact many of the operations. And I just want to place on record, it's not that SABOA is not pro-transformation. It's just that we need to look at it from an operator perspective and see how it is impacting the industry. Because there's certain things with exemptions, but things need to be done. Otherwise, it can actually impact your contract. Because even if you are an employer, not a designated employer, with having less than 50 employees, you need to go and get the exemptions to ensure that you don't actually get blacklisted and don't get the contract. Just on green issues, just so you know, and Gideon is doing the electric vehicle bus presentation tomorrow. But there'll be lots of campaigns running now with the DOT provincially, just to create awareness on green transport. And at the previous meeting, we were talking about having partnerships for incentives for the industry in terms of green projects and carbon credits. I just noted that we do have a partnership with WWF or a relationship, and it may be worth just contacting them and discussing what could be available for the industry. And I think that's it. I think.
Okay, thank you, Shamini. That brings us to the account-based ticketing presentation by Tabu Nale from Nale Technologies. Is Tabu? Okay, Tabu, you're welcome. We're looking forward to have your presentation. Over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tabo from Nale Technologies, and I'm an ITS consultant. And the way I would like to start this presentation is by stating that the introduction of advanced technologies within the public transport sector has actually created an additional responsibility for bus operators. And this responsibility has everything to do with how to use the technology in a way that is productive and profitable. So my intention with this presentation is not to turn you into ABT experts. Neither am I representing DOT or SANRAL or anyone like that. My intention of this presentation is basically to share whatever little information or knowledge I have on ABT, with the hope that my knowledge, together with your industry knowledge, will empower you to be able to take the ABT discussion forward and engage on it on a more confident level, whether you're engaging DOT, whether you're engaging SANRAL, or even the AFC system providers. And as we start, I just want to point out that we are talking about SANRAL ABT. We're not talking about ABT in general, because there are different types of ABTs that are available, that are out there. And a lot of system providers, AFC system providers, will come to you and say, no, but we are ABT compliant, whereas they are not SANRAL ABT compliant. So there's a difference. So in this presentation, when I'm talking about ABT, I'm basically talking about ABT, SANRAL ABT. So let's begin. How do I? No? Thanks. So there are three ideas that I would like to leave you with after my presentation. The first one is that it is the law. The implementation of your AFC or ABT system is a legal matter before it is a technology project. And then the second point is that it is a complex system. The implementation of AFC or ABT is complex from both a technical and an operational point of view. And then the last idea is that ABT is going to have an impact on every operator, whether you choose to implement it or you don't. So let's look at the law, the legal aspect of it. And the law that we're talking about is the National Land Transport Act, which I'm sure every one of you are familiar with. But then Section 8 and the regulations that come from Section 8 are basically focused on the integrated fare systems. These regulations were promulgated in 2011, and they are still in force right now. But as an engineer, and of course I'm going to blame this on being an engineer, I tend to have a better appreciation of the law if I understand the intention behind the law. So that is how I've approached also this NLTA and the integrated fare system as addressed in the Act. And my reading of this law has led me to conclude that the intention behind the law itself can be summarized into one word called interoperability. Now, the question is, what is interoperability? Interoperability, from a technical point of view, it's defined as, or it refers to the seamless integration of different transportation services to enable passengers to transfer from one transport operator to another using a single system of ticketing. So from a practical point of view, it basically means that if I'm a commuter, I should be able to jump off a Gautrain and go into a bus, and then from the bus go into another train, and from that train then be able to catch a taxi using one form of ticketing system. And the way the authors of the law have drafted this or crafted this is basically using a card technology. So at the end of the day, interoperability is to be achieved using a card technology. Personally, I believe the intention is good. And it is good from both a perspective of the commuter as well as the perspective of a bus operator, because it has a potential of making the public transport attractive to more commuters. But let's go a bit deeper onto the law itself. And when you go into the regulations, now this is basically what I've highlighted there is the opening statement of the regulations themselves. And they say the AFC system for any public transport service must comply with the requirements contemplated in these regulations. And this was back in 2011. So before we talk about ABT, we still have to go through EMV. So let us look at what the current regulations are saying about EMV. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to highlight the differences between the current regulations versus what is being proposed. And the intention behind that is that I don't want the association to come across as rejecting ABT while they're not compliant with the current EMV regulations. So to put it differently, we should be careful how we formulate the arguments against ABT, if that is the direction that we want to go to, so that we don't come across as not being compliant with the current regulations and come across as though we are just rejecting everything, even what is promulgated. So that is my intention basically with this slide. So under the current regulations, what makes an AFC system compliant? Cash versus electronic. So you are allowed to run a cash system, but the moment you go electronic, then you need to comply with these regulations. And for your system to be compliant, you have to use a bank-issued EMV low-value payment card. So if it has a microchip in it, then you are safe. It's probably bank-issued and compliant with the regulations. The occasional or infrequent passengers are the only people who are allowed not to use a bank-issued card. But everyone, all the other passengers are, I don't want to say forced, but they're supposed to be using a bank-issued EMV card for your AFC system to be compliant. The regulations are pro-banks. And by that, I mean the fees that are payable in the current EMV regulations, they all go to the banks. And EMV attracts loading fees, which is higher, which is then different to ABT. But EMV attracts loading fees and they don't charge transaction fees. And what do I mean by loading fees? So when a commuter loads value onto the card, they get charged a fee for that loading. So if a commuter loads 10 rands on a card, the amount that actually goes into the card would be 8 rands 50, because the 1 rands 50 would have been paid to the bank as a loading fee. Now let's contrast this to the proposed ABT regulations, and I'm saying it's the proposed regulations because they've not been promulgated. We are being told that it's most likely to be promulgated in October, but if you ask me, we have had that promises also for quite some time now. But let us look at what is being proposed. The cash versus electronic still applies. So it's either you're going cash, or the moment you go electronic fare collection, then you need to comply with the proposed regulations on ABT. It doesn't replace the EMV, the current regulations, they do not replace EMV altogether, but instead they add an ABT card or a Cyprus card. So in other words, a commuter can be able to use an EMV card or a Cyprus card as part of the new regulations. The point about occasional or infrequent passengers, it still applies on the new regulations. And the new regulations are pro-SANRAL as opposed to the EMV regulations, which are pro-banks. And ABT attracts transaction fees, but it does not attract loading fees. So what does that mean? It means when a commuter loads value onto the ABT card, the full 10 rands get loaded onto the card. But when an operator then claims that 10 rands from SANRAL, there's a fee that gets payable to SANRAL for that. I'm not going to go into how much it is because that's another area of discussion basically that needs to be entered into. So the difference between the 2011 regulations or the EMV regulations and the proposed regulations is basically the inclusion of SANRAL as the clearinghouse. And secondly, what they've also included in the new regulations is that operators will be given 3 years from the date of promulgation to basically upgrade their current AFC system to be SANRAL compliant. So that point is basically just saying it's not going to be an overnight requirement for you to be compliant to ABT. So the point that I'm trying to make here on this slide is basically SANRAL is not an AFC system. At the end of the day, as a bus operator, you still be required to procure your own AFC system. And then that AFC system will then have to interface with SANRAL for the reasons of payments. So what does it mean for SANRAL to be a clearinghouse? It basically means that as a commuter, instead of going to a bus operator when I want to travel, I will need to then go to SANRAL. And with SANRAL, I then open what is called a mobility account and then top up that mobility account. And once it gets topped up, then it's going to go into my card. Now, I don't want to go into the technicalities of it, but at the end of the day, you don't top up the card directly, but you top up the mobility account that is held with SANRAL. And then I present that card to your AFC system, and your AFC system will then interface with with Sandra's system, and then you get paid for the trip that I have made. So unlike the case now where you then get your money upfront when I buy a ticket, with the ABT system, even with the EMV system, you only get the money once I have used your service at the end of the day. So the final point that I just wanted to make here is that it's just to reiterate the fact that Sanral ABT regulations have not been promulgated, and as industry players, I'm talking about the ITS space, we don't know for sure what the regulations are going to say. So this is basically coming from the last proposed amendments that was provided on the subject itself. For the sake of time, I'm just going to run through these slides. It's basically, the intention of it is just to show you what does it mean to have an AFC system. Basically, you then need to have a card. We've already spoken about the EMV card and the Cyprus card for APT. You'll then need to have what is called selling points, where commuters will be able to load value onto the cards themselves, and then it interfaces with Sanral or the banks if you're using EMV. You then need to also have a back office software, which is basically going to be responsible for managing your whole fare policies and fare rules and so forth for the commuters. You'll need to have acquiring devices or validators on each and every vehicle, where commuters will be able to tap on the devices themselves for them to get the travel, to get to travel. And lastly, you're going to need to have a clearing house. And if you're using EMV, then your clearing house will be the bank. And if you're using ABT, your clearing house will be Sanral. So at the end of the day, AFC is a complex system, both from a technical point of view as well as from operations. That is why some of the operators, you'd find that they don't even know where to place AFC, which department should basically manage AFC. They would go and say, okay, maybe it should fall under IT or technology department because of its technology nature. Others would say, no, it falls under operations because drivers and the maintenance team need to interact with it. Others would say no, but it should fall under finance department because it's fair collection and it's revenue and so forth. So that all comes from the complexity of implementing an AFC system. But there are people who understand, professional experts who basically understand what needs to happen and who can be able to then go in and assist you with the implementation of an AFC. And I always say that if you are looking at spending maybe 10 or 50 million rands on an AFC system, you should consider maybe setting aside about 10% of that budget to get professional advice or assistance in terms of implementing an AFC system, so that you avoid some of the mistakes that some of the operators have gone through. The last section, I'm just going to also be quick on it, but it's looking at the impact of implementing an AFC or an ABT system. So the good side of things, or the positive impact of implementing an AFC would be interoperability and passenger convenience. Already spoken about it, that it has a potential of bringing in more commuters for the bus operators as well. And it avoids a situation where commuters need to have a tag for this operator or several cards for the other operators, or use cash for other operators and so forth. And then secondly, it reduces boarding times. So instead of I almost say instead of an old Magogo, and I don't know why we always pick on the old Magogo in these examples, but instead of having a commuter spend a lot of time calculating cash and the driver giving them cash back and so forth, it reduces the boarding time because the commuter just needs to tap on the validator and then they move in. It also reduces the cash handling because the bus drivers don't have to handle cash anymore, and all the risks that are associated with handling cash, as well as all the risks that are associated with paper ticket systems and reconciling paper tickets, it gets eliminated. And fourthly, the data that is generated by an AFC system it can be used, or it becomes very valuable in terms of understanding the passenger travel patterns, the peak usage times, and the popular routes and so forth. So that can be used to then improve your operations generally. And then the bad side of things is the fact that the initial investment is high. The implementation of an AFC system is very expensive, not only in terms of the technology itself, but also in terms of upskilling your current employees and so forth. The technological complexity that comes with it also is a negative, in the sense that there's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done on an AFC system, and if anything breaks, then it affects your operations and so forth. The negative cash flow cycle is basically what I touched on earlier, to say that instead of getting your money upfront when a commuter buys a ticket, you are now going to get your money once the commuter has traveled and you have claimed your money from SANRAL. And then lastly, the transaction fees that you need to also be aware of, that to say if your trip or if your fare is 20 rands and you're claiming 20 rands from SANRAL, then you're no longer going to get 20 rands, but you're going to get 20 rands minus the fees that are payable to SANRAL. The ugly side of things, which is basically the potential risks, it has to do with job changes, the fact that the job descriptions of some of your employees will need to change because some of the work will not be done anymore. Customer support, that's another issue that needs to be raised also with SANRAL, in terms of who is responsible for the providing support to the commuters, maybe if something has gone wrong with the loading, or maybe the card is not working and so forth. So that is another issue that needs to be addressed. The loss of patronage, this talks to the fact that if a commuter is on the road and they don't have a facility where they can load value, they don't have any digital tools to be able to load value onto the cards, what happens to them, and does then means also that you are losing that passenger on the side of the road. The fourth one is about system downtime. The fact that the system is very dependent on technology itself, and any breakdowns can halt the entire ticketing system, which would disrupt operations, inconvenience passengers, and affect your reputation. And then the last one is the fare revenue losses, which are also possible, but needs to be also negotiated with SANRAL. This has to do with the fact that if a mobility account of a commuter has run out, then who becomes responsible for the payment of that of the trip that the commuter has actually taken? So what I want to just also close here with is to say the list of possible risks associated with implementing AFC or ABT. I cannot provide the whole list because we'll then spend the whole day in listening to me while I go through that. But the point that I just want to make is that there needs to be a thorough assessment of all the risks that will need to be engaged with the individual bus operators to be able to understand the implication of moving to an ABT system, because it's also based on the unique circumstances and how each operator runs their system. So in closing, I just want to say that implementing an AFC or ABT system has a lot of benefits for both the commuter and the bus operator, but it also presents some risks which should be carefully assessed and mitigated by individual bus operators and as well as by the association. But at the end of the day, the implementation of an AFC system is a legal requirement before it is a technology project. And secondly, the AFC system is a complex system that needs to be carefully planned and thought through before it is implemented. And the last point is that an implementation of an AFC system will have an impact on every bus operator, whether you choose to comply or not comply, or whether you choose to implement it or not implement it. So it's something that each and every bus operator will need to consider and take forward. I thank you.
Tabu, thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions or comments to Tabu? Shamini?
Thanks, Bram. Well, thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question. In terms of SANRAL, why was SANRAL chosen to be the clearinghouse? Is it to repurpose because of the failed e-toll system? I have to speak as a lobbyist from well, I really understand.
I don't know. I don't know if I should answer that question. Maybe we can ask the question to Saveshni. But yeah, so there is that thinking to say it was basically to repurpose the e-toll system. Whether it's a good idea or not, yeah, maybe let me not comment on that. But yeah, so that basically the SANRAL consultants, they've also come through and said that was the thinking behind it, and that is what they want to achieve. Yeah.
Thank you, Tabu. Any further questions or comments?
Tabu, firstly, great presentation. Just a quick comment. You know, we spoke about ABT and the impact it's going to have. And I think we're missing one big point here, though. It's the mindset of our commuters and passengers as well. One of the things you mentioned is cash and card travel. You know, currently in South Africa, I think cash is currently between 40 and 50% of our passengers. And I think that's where we also need to start changing that mindset so that when it's time to move to card and ABT and SANRAL, we start developing into that. You know, some of the AFC systems out there can already handle cashless solutions. However, I think that mindset needs to start, you know, changing from now, and it makes it easier for that transition.
Can I ask you a question? Because that's a great point actually. But the question would be, whose responsibility should it be? Is it the responsibility of the bus operators, or is it the responsibility of government? Well, what do you think about that?
So without putting myself at risk and being stoned outside, I think it starts with, you know, all of us. Change is all of us. Like even with operators. So we need to understand if we want to move towards a cashless environment, where do we need to start? We need to obviously do the education. We need to provide additional points for people to load those smart cards, and you know, or easier ways for them to do that. And you know, you mentioned the elderlies. I was quite amazed to actually see how some of the elderly people, how easy it is for them to transform and start using technology to actually move cashless. So I'm thinking, you know, it might start with the operators, trying to look at what can they do with the current systems they have and start working with the transition. You know, looking at SABOA and all the other people around, there's quite a lot of knowledgeable people, and like yourselves as well. If we start taking all that and putting these ideas together, I think change comes from all of us, operators and everybody, all the organizations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? This one there, John.
Thank you very much. Just a comment from my side as well. I also just have an issue with this SANRAM being forcing operators to align with their clearinghouse as opposed to the banks. Because if you are aligned with the banks, then at least it is the passenger that carries the cost of transaction. But if you align with SANRAM, then you as an operator, then you are forced to carry the cost, and therefore you lose some of the revenue. Is there a way in which we can circumvent that particular part? I just want to know when it becomes propagated by for SANRAM.
I did say that I'm not representing SANRAL. But I like the point that you're making, and I like the way that you are basically putting a distinction on the two, the EMV and the ABT. And I think that was really the purpose of the presentation, to say we need to understand ABT for what it is, and not come across as though we are now just rejecting everything that has to do with the AFC and the regulations. So that question, maybe it's one of the questions that you need to pose to Siveshni tomorrow. Yeah, and just hear what is the thinking around it, or even the minister herself, because she's also supporting this, from what I hear.
John, just following on that. So your total cost of ABT will be firstly your EMV cost, your bank cost. If you let on the card or make use of the card, which is, I don't know, 2 or 3%. Then your clearinghouse cost of 5%, plus your commission to the outlet of between 3 and 5%. So you're talking well in excess of 10% cost, which somebody must pay. Okay, some of that is already in the current system to some extent. But not the full extent. So yeah, I think that's a very important issue, that we're talking about more than 10% cost to the passenger. Because even if the operator pays it, the operator must recover it from the passengers. Maybe just start with from my side, just what is the taxi industry's view on ABT? And secondly, going forward, who's responsible for the communication, or who will approach the operators, or what will happen now going forward in terms of taking this forward?
I don't know why you're laughing, Marius, but yeah, I haven't engaged the taxi industry fully. All I hear is basically it's secondhand information that I hear about them. The big issue with them is basically it's with the drivers themselves, because it's the drivers that handle the cash, and if you remove the cash from the system, then it becomes a problem. So it's how do we then incentivize the drivers to basically work with the system, so that becomes then the responsibility of the taxi owners themselves, and also considering the fact that the taxi drivers are the ones that are sitting with the system, with the validators in the vehicles and so forth. So it's very easy for them to sabotage the system. So there's basically that big issue with the taxi industry, as far as the AFC or the ABT system is concerned. In terms of who should approach who, I think maybe Shamim, you can assist here, but maybe it's the operators that need to basically just approach SANRAL on this, or the other way around. But I guess that's the decision of the house in here, to just advise on how to take it forward. But yeah.
Thanks, Harry. So yes, I think so. After the conference, we'll hear tomorrow from Siveshni. She's from SANRAL. She's a project manager at SANRAL. Let's hear from her. And then after that, SABOA will have a meeting with the DOT. As I said, the DOT consultants have promised to facilitate an urgent meeting We just want to hear first what is it, and we will have to approach, as I said, it's two issues in terms of lobbying to see whether as an industry we can afford this and we will support it, and then the technical aspects of complying and all of these issues. They've already, the consultants have already drafted a Q&A. I think it's about 87 questions with responses to operators, which we can disseminate, we can circulate. But the real challenge is, do we accept as an industry? Have they spoken to us? Have they spoken to you to discuss the impact? Because every business is going to be slightly different. And I think that part hasn't been done. That's why I say I think it's a bit premature to promulgate. And I believe they're quite far ahead. So it's not really a pipe dream. It's sitting with the Department of Art and Culture to actually translate into the various languages. So that means it's going ahead. So unless we lobby vociferously with the minister and let her know that we were not consulted enough, I think just to have the public commentary period is not enough, because as an industry that's going to be so severely impacted, they have to talk to the operators directly. So we will put that across.
Anything else from anybody? If not, Tabu, thank you so much. Very interesting, and we're looking forward to an interesting road ahead. Thank you. The next point on the agenda is some closing remarks from Shamini. Nothing. Okay, thank you. Anything from anybody else on the general? If not, it's then my pleasure to close the meeting. Thank you for your attendance and your constructive input, and hope to see you around also tonight and the rest of the afternoon and tomorrow at the exhibition. Thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you.